Yeah.
And
So none of them live very far away, right?
no.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got 7 grandkids,
Oh my goodness.
all the way from 26 to, well, she's gonna be 5 in October.
Any of them go to school here? Or
Huh?
Any of them go to school here? Or
Oh
anything?
yeah, Mark, who lives in College Station, he has to go to school in
Yeah.
College Station. Well, the girl goes, the boys graduated and out of school,
Yeah.
but the other 2 go to the Catholic school down in Bryan.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you need a light or anything?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
I don't know how to do all this. I'm not.
Well, what I do is, like I say, I come every veteran that I've done on the TV show. I've done exactly this. I've come to their home and just visited with them a little bit, and just sort of heard, just sort of an overview of their story. And then you've seen the TV show, I guess. It's pretty much what you see is what you get. We're just sitting there and 28.5-minute TV show, and we talk about as much as we can in 28.5 minutes. And you got a great story. I mean, just from what I read, from what Bill Youngkin did with moving from the troop transport plane to the B-47 to the B-52 to the
quite a. I thought maybe what would help is if I could just tell you chronologically what happened to me.
Sure. You were raised in Snook, is that right?
Yeah, I graduated from Snook High School in 1941.
Yeah.
And picking cotton and seeing them airplanes go over, I thought, man, it's got to be something better.
Better than picking cotton.
Yeah, and I love to fly. I used to build my own little different things, airplanes I wanted to fly. And of course, at that time, they had to have 2 years of college.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to they call it National Youth Association back in the old CCSE and all.
Right.
And they had a guy, this is over at Inks Lake, and they had a guy that was rebuilding an airplane, and he took a bunch of us in to help him rebuild a little Oranka. So I got that close to being to fly.
And it was near Inks Lake? Over near
over
Burnett?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And then they had Pearl Harbor.
Right.
And they decided they needed us people who just knew what an airplane was like, I guess, sent us to Corpus Christi, and I worked at the Naval Air Station in the engine thing there. I was, 18 years old? Mm-hmm. And
what kind of planes did you work on, or engines? I mean,
Hellcats,
Wildcat, at Corpus Christi.
F2F.
F2.
Biplane Grumman's.
Oh, Grumman's, yeah.
They're real
F2F,
sharp and stubby.
Yeah.
And there was another SBC. Something else. There was bi-wing too.
Right.
And then they decided to make a civil service, and so I worked there until November of '42, and I took a bus over to San Antonio because I heard that you go over and take a test. They'd say you go take a test and you pass, you get in the aviation cadet program. Mm-hmm. I went over and somehow passed the test, and they swore us in that same day. I said they didn't even. I guess we looked okay, So I was sworn in, and they said, well, probably 6 months before you get called up. So I went back, and I think I worked till about Christmas, and then I came back to Snook to live with my parents for a while. Well, January, I got orders called active duty to Shepherd Field for basic training. And so...
It's in Wichita Falls?
Wichita Falls.
Right.
And it was in February.
It's cold.
And they said, bring enough clothes for 3 days all the time when you got drafted. And I went up there with a light jacket and something. And we got up there, and they didn't have uniforms for most of them. We marched and dug in calisthenics in civilian clothes, about like you say, froze to death. Well, it lasted 30 days, and nobody ever told you what you're going to do or where you're going to go. They just sent you. We got on a train one night and we figured we would head north. We didn't know where. It ended up at Stillwater, Oklahoma. It was Oklahoma A&M then.
Right.
What they called the Tonnage Training Detachment.
Mm-hmm.
They had all these excess people waiting, and the colleges had nobody in them, so they sent us up there and gave us, which helped me a lot because I never heard of physics or anything like that at Snook High School.
Right.
And we did a lot of math, physics, and stuff like that. And I was there 3.5 months when I went to San Antonio, where they did all the big physicals and psychomotor tests, psychology tests, and decided whether you're going to be a pilot, a radar navigator, or what.
Right.
And my name came out on the list as a pilot, and so went to pre-flight there, went across the road to pre-flight. Then I went to Bonham, Texas for primary, PT-19. You know what a PT-19 is, open cockpit.
Open cockpit thing, yeah.
Yeah. And I went to basic training, BT-13 at Greenville, Texas. And I went to twin engine advanced at Ellington. And I graduated May 23rd, 1944. And everybody got assignments to B-24, transition, and all this stuff. But several of us didn't get no assignment. They said, well, go home for a week and come back and we'll have your assignment. Well, went back and I had orders to report to Camp Stoneman, California for going overseas. So we went overseas. Never had any transition to anything, just from advanced AT-10. Well, we landed in Milne Bay, New Guinea. Nobody knew what to do with us. We sat around there, and finally some guy from the 13th Air Force said, we've been looking for you guys. You're supposed to be at Guadalcanal, Henderson Field. So they put us on a commercial type B-24, I guess, and I ended up at Henderson Field, and there's where I joined my troop carrier squadron.
The 64th?
64th Troop Carrier Squadron.
Had you ever flown a C-47 before?
No, never been in one.
Yeah?
So, of course, they didn't have no training program or anything, so we just flew third pilots and watched what was going on on all the they did all shipment between island, haul, all kinds of stuff.
Right.
We never knew what they were going to have in there. And then you became a co-pilot and finally a pilot.
So you flew everybody. I mean, you flew active troops going to combat, wounded troops. Did you?
Well, we from Guadalcanal, we'd fly ahead, and then our unit would move. We moved up to the Admiralties, and then we went up to Biak, and finally into the Philippines. And I said, while we were doing all this, you never knew what you're going to have. You might have a Jeep in there.
Yeah.
They could load a Jeep in that thing, or a bunch of tents, or almost anything. But we always flew off runways that were made for fighters and bombers, because they would take a little strip or take an island and leave the Japanese, there. Well,
were these runways that had been constructed by Seabees?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were either coral or that pierced iron plank.
Right.
When we got to the Philippines, our way we flew different, because the Army was going to get rid of all the Japanese, so they went up in the hills and everywhere else, and then we did a lot of dropping K rations to them down in the valleys and stuff. They'd always be down in the bottom of a canyon, and you'd have to go in there, power off, and hope you get out the other end. But the other thing is, they sent us into all these little old strips that were about 2,000-3,000 feet long, and did a lot of medical evac out of those things.
Yeah.
And I got a C-47 stuck in the mud at Iloilo City on the Isle of Panay, and it wouldn't come out full throttle, nothing. We finally, there was a road grader and a dump truck there, and we hooked one to each gear and pulled it out.
Pulled it out.
Yeah, and then we went on.
Yeah.
But anyhow, like I say, we were used to all these pretty big runways, and then we get in the Philippines, and man, it's like making a carrier takeoff.
Yeah, it was that quick.
Yeah, you could. I remember taking off these little strips with about 18 litter patients, and you could fly that if you were very gentle at about 60 miles an hour. You could get it off the ground.
You could get it off.
But it'd take miles to get up flying
Right.
speed.
Right.
Anyhow.
I read about one time that you, I guess, was it a landing that you
Oh,
you did a 180 skid?
yeah.
Yeah.
That was another muddy.
Uh-huh.
And then we flew out of a valley. I think it was in Luzon. A lot of these places I get mixed up because I think we made every island over there many times. But they just mowed the jungle grass, and we just took off, and it rained twice a day, and we were making drop mission sea rations, and you had to take the doors off back there to shove them out. They're free fall, you know.
Yeah.
And mud and water. The airplane land, you get them two ruts down there after a little while, and the airplane land, the only thing you can see is the nose. The rest of the mud and water flying, and man, you couldn't check the props or nothing, no brakes.
Wow.
And when the ruts got too bad, they just moved over a little bit. But them old airplanes had...
And mud would make it a heavier plane too, wouldn't it? I mean, it would.
Had a lot of mud inside as well as outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
How many were in your crew?
oh, actually, we only flew with about 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
We had very few navigators.
You were a pilot, right?
Yeah, and we did most of our navigation from one island to the other. And I
Did your own navigation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only good thing about it is usually when you get to where you think you're going, they have a big thunderstorm over you can see the cloud way back there where the island is.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, all the landing strips were mostly on near the shoreline, along the shoreline of these islands.
Did you fly at day and night?
No, we never flew much at night.
Not much at night. Flew in the daytime.
But we flew through, in the tropics you don't get lightning or thunder much,
Yeah.
but you get a lot of rain. And I swear we threw rainstorms that you felt like you already went underwater. It rained so hard. But
wow.
I don't remember of anybody ever turning back, though. We just bored through there. That was a good old airplane.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
well, I'm making it too long. Anyhow,
No, you're not. No, you're not. No, that's. I'm just trying to visualize that. Especially through the rainstorms. I mean, you had a job to do, and you had to figure out how to get from one place to the other.
And like I say, you never know what you're going to find on there. And this day, I don't know who determined where you was going to go on there and where it was going. We just looked at it and they told us where to go. And
You're like the FedEx delivery guy. You just go and deliver, right?
I walked in an airplane one day to take off, and they got it half full, the fuselage, of 4-inch pipes, 20 foot long, whatever length they were, down to the door back there. I thought, man, this thing, I don't know. And everything, the max gross weight is 5,000 pounds, so everything was under 5. When they made the manifest, it always added up to a little less than 5,000.
Yeah. Sometimes it was right on it, right?
Oh, it was over most of the time. Anyhow, it flew, but it wouldn't. You couldn't get no speed out of it. It was. And then, like I say, I'm getting too long. Anyhow,
No, you're not.
the war was over in August, I guess. I got on a boat in Manila to come home about my birthday, my 22nd birthday, to come home. And I got back about Christmas to San Francisco. And of course they had no trains or anything. They were all full, and we had to wait around, I guess, a week before we got to San Antonio. And they said, anybody that wants to stay in the reserves, raise your hand. And I raised my hand. And I thought, there ain't going to be another war, and I don't want to go through all this stuff again. So 1951, I was going to the University of Houston and working and trying to major in math. And February of 51, I was recalled, and I thought I was going to Korea. Well, they took a bunch of us over to San Antonio and gave us a bunch of written tests for about 2-3 days. And they had a quota for ground radar maintenance officers. I guess because I was majoring in math, they thought that I need to go. So I went to Keesler for 10 months and learned to be all about electronics. And
where's Keesler?
Biloxi, Mississippi.
Okay.
And after 10 months there, I went to Otis to a AC&W squadron, and there's where I met my wife. And I don't know how many. I was there a year, couple of years. Had one son born there, and then they disbanded that thing, and they said.
Now, where was that?
This was at Otis Air Force Base, Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts.
Cape Cod.
Okay, Cape Cod. Okay.
And
your wife was from up there?
yeah, she was from Rhode Island.
I see. What was her name?
Barbara Hutchin. And me and my oldest son just came back from there Saturday.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, we spent a week
Yeah.
up in Rhode Island, Maine, Massachusetts and Maine.
She still have family up there?
Yeah, that's all we went to see.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. The
Oh.
weather was nice. Anyhow, and they disbanded that, and so they sent me to a big radar site at Brunswick Naval Air Station in Brunswick, Maine. Well, I was only there a 3 months when they decided I ought to go overseas to Tripoli, Libya. And my wife was 7-8 months pregnant. She couldn't travel, so I was going to go, and then she was going to come. Well, I got over there, and there was no housing. You had to live on the economy with the Arabs, and I knew she would never want to do that. So they said, we got a 3-year tour, but if you want to go out to this remote site out there, it's a year tour. So I said, well, that sounds better to me. So I spent a year at a early morning remote radar site. It's about 5 miles south of Benghazi, Libya. And my second son was born at the Newport Naval Hospital. And he was a year old when I first saw him.
In Newport, Rhode Island?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
wow. So what did you do there? I mean, in the radar?
At the radar site, we just kept it running, and we fully tracked airplanes coming, along from Egypt and along there. The base was 450 feet wide and 750 feet long. We did everything that a base does. We had to have water and haul the water and everything. Anyhow.
Yeah.
When I was coming home, I got orders to say you're going to be an aircraft commander on a B-47. And so anybody that on flying status and not in the flying job had to go back. And SAC was, I guess, keeping themselves up too. So there's where it all started. And at that time, to be an aircraft commander in a B-47, you had to be triple rated. So I went to radar navigation and bombing school at Connolly at Waco for 6 months. And they also give us a course in nuclear or atomic bombs. And then I went to transition B-47s at McConnell, Wichita, Kansas, for, I don't know, 3-4 months. We got 32 hours. They thought we was ready to fly. I'll tell you.
B-47's different. That's a...
Yeah. I went from about 140 knot cruise speed to 140 knot final approach speed. And from 2 engines to 6 engines.
Yeah.
And things happened fast from what I was used to. It was tough, but somehow I struggled through it. And then SAC made everybody go through the survival and escape and evasion class out at Stead in Reno, Nevada.
What kind of missions did you fly? Because this was after the Korean War, right?
Yeah, the Korean War.
So this was during the Cold War, or the start of the Cold War.
The Korean War, I spent in Libya until 54, 55. Well,
Right.
I went to navigation school in 56, and then I went to that survival school and finished that in November, and I got to MacDill, I think, in December of 56.
Yeah.
And of course, then the training really started, because we could get the airplane off the ground and on, but then I had to learn the air refueling from a KC-97, which is probably the hardest thing I ever did in my life.
Wow.
And B-47, we had to put 20% flaps down. We were hanging there on a stall practically, and the old KC-97 saying, as fast as we can go, you know. And we had to come down to 15,000 feet all the time to catch them. Anyhow.
And this is to be refueled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in SAC, you flew as a crew all the time. And when you became combat ready, then you were assigned a target, and this is the target you covered all the time, pretty much. Because you had to study it and brief the wing commander or vice commander, and he had to certify that they thought that we could fly the mission. So I did that for the rest of my career. And anyhow, I flew B-47s. I got about 1,800 hours or more in a B-47, I guess. And after the Cuban crisis, I was in MacDill during the Cuban crisis.
Right.
And
were you deployed during that at all? I mean,
yeah, we were. We moved all out of there and went to Savannah. All the fighters and recon airplanes took over MacDill. And we moved out of MacDill in about 3 days, the whole bomb wing. And the night that Kennedy was making the speech,
Right.
I was on a KC-97 standing up going to Hunter, because they had so much power units and there was no room they had no seats down. I shouldn't get in all these details, but I had just come back from 30 days overseas, and when you came back, you had 3 days that they couldn't give you any duty or anything, and we always went out to eat or something. The crew of three on the crew of a B-47, and ended up we didn't go out to eat or anything. They did get us to come back anyhow.
Right. But you were on. You said so. You were.
We were all.
The night of Kennedy's speech. You were in Savannah. Is that right?
No, I was on a. I had just come back, so I wasn't assigned to a B-47 at that time. When I got to Savannah, they put all airplanes on alert.
I see.
And then we were loaded and ready to go.
Ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyhow, right after the Cuban crisis, I got orders to go to B-52 transition at Castle at Merced, California. And after I finished that, I went to Griffiths Air Force Base in Rome, New York. And I spent five and a half years up there. And I got to be, you get around, you get to be an instructor and evaluator. SAC has a what they call a standardization section that you get in, and you have to give all the other pilots and crews their evaluations once a year formally, and all tests. So I was put into that section, and I did that up there for a long time. Then in 1968, I was nominated to be the chief of the standardization section at Seymour Johnson's 68th Bomb Wing. So I went down there as that. And the B-2G, which I was in the whole time, was not capable of carrying conventional weapons. So they used D models, in Vietnam most of the time, until toward the end. I think they got G models, but I'd gotten out by then. Being chief of standardization, we sent crews TDY. They'd go through a little D model training, and then they would go there for 180 days.
Yeah.
I didn't get to do that because they figured I was, I guess, essential. But anyhow, I flew as a crew member almost until a few months before I retired. So
right. When did you retire?
July 1st, 1970.
July 1st, 1970.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So you never went to Vietnam?
No, I didn't.
No.
Never went to Korea. Never went to Vietnam.
Yeah, you're in Korea. You were in Sicily. Yeah. Or Libya, rather. Yeah.
People say you must have had political influence. I don't know. Like say.
Well, what a fascinating career. And then after your military service, what was your career? What did you do?
Well, I didn't do anything. I worked at Twin City Mission for about 13 years. I started down there as a truck driver.
Yeah.
And I did about everything you could do down there until, I guess, somewhere in the 80s. It started, when I was down there, it was a Christian type thing,
Right.
We could make the people go to church, and we mostly had these, what we used to call bums. They'd come down
Right.
winter and leave.
Yeah.
Now it's completely different and much larger than what we ever had.
Sure.
I did the treasurer there for a long time. Did you know Mr. Aggie? He had the Aggie license plate.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember his name.
I can't either. Yeah.
Well, he was a treasurer, and I took over from him.
I see.
And I did it. Like I said, I can't remember, but it was sometime in the 80s. It was changing a lot from what the
Right.
plus after 13 years. I did. Plus, I grew up here, and my folks were old, and I sort of took care of them until
Right.
they passed away. And we had some land out there. I still got some cows and stuff out there.
Out near Snook?
Yeah. I never got a paying job here.
Yeah.
So that's
So you and your wife had how many kids now? You had
4 boys.
4 boys.
3 of them graduated from A&M.
Uh-huh.
And the last one, he was going, but he got hooked on this paramedic deal, and that's all he wanted to do.
I see.
That's what it is. The oldest one, he's probably the only one that's working in his degree. He graduated with a degree in agronomy, and he's the FSA director of Lee County over at Gidding. And David, he graduated in horticulture, and he's a commercial real estate developer in Austin. And Mark, he graduated in ocean engineering, and it's 80s. He graduated in the 80s when they parked all the drilling. So he went back and I think he got something in telephone. I don't know. Anyhow, he worked for College Station for a while.
Yeah.
Traffic lights and stuff. And then he got a job with TxDOT and traffic and sign.
Right.
And Paul, like I say, he's a paramedic at Montgomery County.
Yeah.
And that's.
Well, that's great. That's a wonderful career. And then you retired
As a lieutenant colonel.
A lieutenant colonel.
I was fortunate, SAC had spot promotion.
Yeah.
And I was a spot major until I got promoted to major, and then I was a spot lieutenant colonel until I finally got, permanently promoted.
Did you fly anymore after you retired?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I had a friend who owned the airplane that I used to fly with. I don't know, Dr. Buck
Uh-huh.
Did you know him? Or
No, I didn't.
He was a medical doctor here for a while, but he died with leukemia some years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt kind of, I don't know what, like not enough happening with one of them little airplanes.
Yeah. Wasn't quite like the B-47.
No,
No.
say you could eat your lunch at 60 miles an hour or so.
Have you got any? I noticed this picture that you gave Bill. Have you got that picture or any other pictures around anywhere? Let me see what you got.
I was going to,
Oh, okay.
here's a thing. This is me and my crew
Oh, really?
getting in the airplane.
Oh, I'll be darned. How about that?
Well, I guess we had alert going on.
Is that you climbing up first?
Yeah.
Are you in here anywhere else?
No, that's,
Oh,
that's
that's
just an old.
Oh, that's neat. I might borrow that and scan that. See what else you got.
Here, and I didn't know till really.
Oh, there we go.
It's a book my wife
Put
made.
together. Oh yeah, there's that picture
Yeah.
right there. Oh yeah, this is.
You want to look through there.
Yeah, I might. There's some. Oh, there's some good pictures. That's some good. This is wonderful.
I tell you, I think about the evolution of atomic nuclear weapons,
Uh-huh.
and it's amazing. You know what I'm peeved about is the news people saying, how come we didn't have that? You know, remember when they were fussing about not having the right armor jackets over in Iraq, and
Uh-huh.
the Humvees were getting shot up, and I told them what we went through.
Oh yeah. Now, is that Barbara?
Yeah,
Okay,
she was getting some kind of award.
I see. Oh, this is great. And she put this scrapbook together for you?
Yeah, I didn't even know it was around until
Wow.
my kids started looking through it. I don't know if you'd like to take it with you. But
Well, I'd like to take it with me and scan some things, and then I will hand it back to you just as is on Thursday, because there are some great pictures in here. Well, there's the picture that from that magazine comes off out of right there.
yeah.
Yeah. Getting awards. What you got there?
Well, that's the same as here. There's a thing that was in that magazine there.
Uh-huh.
And you don't have to read all that, but I'll give you a copy of this.
Yeah, okay.
That's the same.
Yeah.
It's when we were on a check ride with once a year we had to go on get a check ride from the big wheels at SAC,
Uh-huh.
and we lost an engine. I had an explosion in the number one pod.
Right.
All things went crazy after
Wow.
that. And anyhow,
Well, I've never had such a good number of pictures to choose from. I'd like to use them all, but I won't be able to do that. But that's great, and I'll just hand this all back to you on
well, like I say, I'm not.
Thursday.
You see this thing here?
Uh-huh. Recorder?
I don't know. My kids have been after me for, I don't know, a couple of years.
Uh-huh.
They want me to talk to this thing and
Right.
tell me.
Well, you just finished talking into this thing right here. I just recorded everything you said. So
That's too bad.
yeah, no, I've got it all. And as a matter of fact, what I'm going to do and what I do for everybody is this conversation that you and I have had. I'll put it on a CD so your kids will have it. Okay? Yeah, so they'll always have that. So they'll always know that.
You
And the
didn't get any
grandkids.
of these interesting stories, though.
Huh?
You didn't get a lot of these interesting stories.
Well, tell me some of the interesting stories.
Well, I was, we were talking about how things evolve.
Right.
Like, if you ever heard, anytime they described the bombing of Hiroshima, they were assembling this bomb on the way to the target.
Right.
Well, the Atomic Energy Commission controlled all the weapons. They owned them, and they didn't want the capsule in the place. So that was what you had to do, is put the capsule in the big ball HE
Mm-hmm.
on the way to the target.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in B-47, at high altitude, the bomb bay is not pressurized.
Right.
So the only time you can put it in is down when you're refueling.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was the navigator is going to go back there in the bomb bay. And this thing had a trap door you open, and there's two big canisters of HE high explosive you take out.
Yeah.
And then they had a tool screwed in the top of this capsule type thing and take it out of the canister. And this is heavy.
Right.
And you got to put it in there and screw it in there, and then put these two HEs in behind it and close it up again. I can imagine a navigator back there in the bomb bay while you air refuel and trying to get that. And they finally decided they would put some batteries, and they would have a motor that retracted, and then you could insert it in like that. And the other thing is, they kept all the bombs at, Gray Air Force Base at Port Hood is a big long runway, and nobody knew why it was there.
Right.
Well, there's where all the weapons were. And if we had MacDill, we had to go first to Gray to pick up, of course, as things, all the time I was in, the time was a big question. Short time, That's why we were on alert. They figured the only airplanes really going to have a chance to bomb is the ones that are airborne, because SAC bases probably get the first missile. And with intercontinental ballistic missiles, you had 30 minutes or so.
Yeah.
When they got missiles on submarines, 15 minutes. That was our time to get off the ground, 15 minutes. I've sat on the end of a runway in a B-52 all night long. I don't know why, whether they bring you meals to you.
Yeah.
But
wow.
Anyhow, then the other thing is when they went to, got surface-to-air missiles, B-47 was made to bomb high altitude. And they said, well, you're a dead duck at high altitude, you got to fly low level. So we went low level, but they have no low level flying capability except visually. Well, they had curtains for flash blindness for high altitude, but you can't keep them closed if you're going to fly visually down low level, so you had to open them. So they said, what if you get flash blindness? So they solved the problem. They gave us an eye patch. You put over one eye.
Never solved that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
It didn't cost very much either. They finally, and of course then they had weapons that you couldn't drop low level and get away from.
Right.
So it took them a while to figure that out, and they finally got some drogue retarded ones that we dropped from about 18,000 feet. And in the meantime, they had went to Edwards, and some test pilots decided we ought to do it like the fighters do an Immelman, and it would release somewhere and it would go up in the air and then down. And can you imagine 425 knots, and they put a big G meter right in front of the pilot, and a timer button on the wheel, control wheel. And when you started pull up, you punched the timer, and you kept 2.5 G's on that G meter until you got upside down. And somewhere that bomb was released in there. And then you had to roll over and come back down. And fortunately, they gave us 2 rides in a T-33 doing Immelmans, which guys like me had never been, never ever did any acrobatics since basic training.
Yeah.
Anyhow, the wings started coming up for the B-47s, and they finally decided that was not the way to go.
It was too, it was too.
But this is what I'm saying about, you're reading the papers about, we should have had this and should have. It's always something like that, you know.
Yeah.
Things evolve.
It's not easy. Yeah.
And it's, I don't know. Now, our communications was HF radio back then, and now I guess you can talk to anybody in the world on the cell phone.
Exactly, and they do.
Yeah,
and they do.
And SAC kept a B-52 over Thule all these years. We used to go up there and spend 12 hours doing figure eights over Thule, because they wanted to know if a missile or something destroyed the BMU site up there, and checked in with SAC headquarters once an hour while you're up there. That's another 20-hour flight or something.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Indeed. Do you know where KAMU TV is? Where
No,
the
I
TV
don't.
station is?
No.
Are you somewhat familiar with the campus, with the A&M campus? You know a little bit. Okay, let me draw you a map. Okay.
Okay.
Let me draw you a map. So I'll